Straight up with a twist.
And your cocktail of the day is the Vesper. Made popular by 007 and most recently This Is Us star Mandy Moore. Ingredients are half an ounce of vodka, 1/4 ounce of Lillet Blonde, and 2 ounces of gin. Now you can also replace another aperitif like a coquille for the mixture with the Lillet Blonde if you would like, for whatever your taste. And you shake it over ice, or like gin, we don't want to bruise it, so you can stir it. And you shake it into a goblet and add a lemon peel as your twist. What's up, humans? You're listening to Katie Rose, Straight Up with a Twist. Today I wanted to talk about Thanatophobia. Ooh, phobias. We all got them. This one is probably one you haven't heard of before until I say it, and you're going to go, oh, I never knew that's what it was called. Thanatophobia is a fear of death. So a fear of dying, thinking about death, not comprehending death, anything involving death. It's not necrophobia, a fear of dead bodies. It is the actual fear of dying. So this is something that I have struggled with. I am not officially diagnosed, so you can probably diagnose me with hypochondria if you would like to. But I do this, and a lot of the times too, like I've also had breathing issues my whole life. And at first I'm like, is this athletic-induced asthma? Couldn't really get diagnosed with that. I've been to a pulmonologist, but I've always had breathing issues. And my silly self, who can't be diagnosed with anything, has just decided my rib cage is really wide, and maybe that has something to do with it. Like, I have no idea. Like, is it pressing down on my lungs? Like something, like I have a short torso, so maybe, you know, the disfiguration in my swayback syndrome is pressing down on my lungs. Do I have a deviated septum? You know, sometimes if I pull my nostrils open, I can breathe better. Who knows? But all I know is I can't get answers. I've been to ENTs. I've had dizzy spells. I don't know if I officially have vertigo. My grandmother has vertigo, but I get dizzy by looking at something on a screen. I get dizzy if I spin or turn my head too quickly, you know. I've always, like, you know, that space ride at fairs. It blows my mind that anyone, I think that's when you find out. That's when you find out if you get motion sickness, or on a car trip and you're like, oh, I'm going to get car sick, which when I feel like kids get it more. You know, our equilibriums must be more off when we're younger. But, you know, getting car sick as a child was a real thing in my family. I just remember that we were on a trip I lived in California. I was born in San Francisco, but we had moved to an Air Force base, and it was closer to Sacramento. And we were like, let's go to San Francisco for the weekend. And all three of us threw up. I remember my mom giving us these, now I know, are like vitamin C candies. And she would trick us into thinking like, that'll settle your stomach. Or like a peppermint will settle your stomach. Or like, do you remember sucrets? Sucrets, the little like cherry, and they have like the S on them, and they'd like come in a tin can. Like just anything that was in her Mary Poppins purse, basically, to give to us to be like, okay, this is going to work. Don't throw up in my car. Please don't throw up in my car. You know, and I remember we pulled over and all three of us were down for the count. I'm pretty sure one of us threw up just from watching the others throw up. So I've always had motion sickness. And of course I'm a dancer and I love doing turns and, you know, doing pirouettes and fouette turns and things like that. And it's always been a struggle for me. And I was a gymnast too. And I remember I'd do my back handsprings and my back tuck, and I'd come out of it and the whole room would be spinning. And I'm like, is no one else experiencing this? Is it just me? And I would find out that, yeah, other people were totally fine. I also have kind of circulation issues. And I may have mentioned this before, but, you know, I'll get that feeling of that hair around the toe, and like my toe is going numb. It's usually below the knee that I get that. But I get numbing, you know, feelings as well. Especially if you're doing gymnastics and you're kind of flying upside down, your hands can kind of go numb for a moment because all of the bee just rushes to your fingertips because you're flying around. Oh, I just said bee. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Everyone has weird things, right? So I was discussing this with a friend the other day. Like, she kind of does these hiccups. And I was like, well, I have a thing too, and I have trouble saying the B word. What do you think the B word? Well, in context of what I just said, it's BLOOD. I force myself to say it. I've gotten a lot better in conversation, just so I don't look like a complete idiot, and people aren't like, what's wrong with her? But especially with, talking about IVF and things like that, it's not necessarily the site, okay? Like people like, then how do you watch medical shows? How do you deal with your period once a month? And I'm like, okay, it's not the site of it. It's about how it happens. So seeing a stabbing or slicing, like in movies, horror films, like I do not watch horror films. Like not only do I not watch them because of that, but because they give me actual nightmares. I mean, I just start questioning everything in life. I'm like, who's behind that corner? Like, every sound becomes something, 10 times more scary. There's a monster here. There's a murderer here. Someone that I made angry is going to break into my house and kill me in the middle of my sleep, So that's why I don't watch them, because I don't want to be in that type of headspace. But it's something about going into like your veins, like breaking inside my temple, in my fortress, like just invading that space to get to the B, So that's why shots are so difficult for me. And, any kind of subcutaneous injection or, and I've truly come a long way with it because of my IVF. So, somewhere along the line, that became an issue for me. So even just saying blood is like difficult for me. Like I've been in sermons, where they say it over and over and over again. Or if, someone at my job is like, oh, the blood bank is here. And they just B, 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 B. And I'm like, ah. So when it's being repeated over and over again, I kind of have to like muffle my ears and be like, okay, don't listen to this right now. Move on, move on, move on. You probably won't be hearing me using the B word very often on this podcast, but I just really wanted to come back to this phobia that I have, this thanatophobia. And all I can remember is, when I was younger, it just kind of started happening. I wish I could pinpoint exactly, but I had trouble going to sleep at night, and I would ask my mom, like, am I going to wake up? What happens when I die? Like, I was one of those very curious kids, and I would ask a lot of questions. And my dad was really good at science, and I'd ask him lots of questions like, how far away is the moon? And, just all of these different questions about how the world works. And he's really good at history and timelines and things like that. And I didn't get it. I was like, I just started really questioning things at a very, very young age. And I remember when my grandmother died, and I remember her story, which is not funny, but funny. There's always, humor that you can find in things, I suppose. And my great-grandmother was visiting and kind of staying with us in Florida for a while. And they were all originally from Ohio, and she had a heart attack. They went to the hospital. She was fine. She survived the heart attack. They're like, let's monitor her overnight. Okay, we'll see her tomorrow. She's fine, whatever. We get a phone call, and they said she died. And the family was like, what? We just came from there. Everything was fine. Yeah, well, the nurse was in the room, and she was just talking to the nurse. And all of a sudden she goes, uh-oh. And then she passes out and dies. And that's the humorous part. And you're just kind of like, what was the uh-oh? Like, did you see something? You just felt it coming, maybe it was a feeling, And I guess that moment has always stuck in my head of like, when is the realization, that you're dying? And then just the curiosity of how's it going to go down? Nobody knows. We don't know. Nobody knows. And some people believe God knows, but, even that's questionable because he can't make everything happen that's happening on earth. There are too many forks in the road and timelines, right? No, multiverses. But yeah, it's just an interesting, and this could get into, religion as well. And, what do you believe comes, after death? What is life and death? There's not even many quotes that can comfort me. Death is not the opposite of life, but it's a part of it. There's a lot of different quotes you can, try to read, and it's like, oh, it's just the next great adventure, after you die, but I get scared. Like every day I think about death. I think about what if I have visceral reactions to things. Like I can actually like imagine myself like crossing a street and getting hit by a car, and I'll just kind of like flinch for a second, and people around me will be like, what was that? I'm like, oh, nothing. Like I was just thinking about dying, no big deal. And I've asked friends about this, and I'm like, is this normal? Like, do you guys think about death? They're like, no. I'm like, well, aren't you scared about it? Aren't you afraid? And they're like, no, like that's just a part of life. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, but it's not a part of life. It's completely different. Like this is life. And then there's death, you know, like you say it's a part of life because we witness people dying. We see that it happens, you know, and it's freaky to me. And it's that fear of the unknown, you know, and, you know, religion is fear-based, you know, in a lot of ways. And I just get wrapped up in it. And I don't know if there's other people out there who have this feeling or think about this all the time. But yeah, I think about, am I going to get in a car accident today? If I get in a car accident, and like, this is probably from television too. It's like, what am I going to be thinking? Who am I going to be thinking about? Will I be in pain? If I am in pain, how long will the pain last? You know, I really think about these things all the time. And it makes me nervous. Sometimes I'm like, well, I've heard of people having heart attacks in their 20s and 30s. What if that's me? What if I am at home by myself and I choke on a piece of pizza and I die? You know, and then I'm like, and I eat really quickly and I have like choked because I'm like so hungry, and then I just eat really quickly, and I'm like, I probably shouldn't do that, especially when I'm by myself. Like, so now I'm like careful about what I'm eating when I'm at home, always have a water nearby. I'm like thinking about buying one of those Heimlich devices that they use for infants, and you like put it around your mouth and it like helps you. I mean, maybe everybody should have one of these. You know, this would maybe be a good housewarming gift for me to give my clients in real estate. Welcome to your new home, just in case you choke and no one's here. Here you go. But you know, it's a real thing. People do actually choke to death, you know? And so I don't know how to get rid of that. I've always, you know, I think that's probably why I live my life the way I live it. Like I live it to its fullest. I take risks. I've jumped out of planes. I'm like, let's try this. Like, I'm not afraid to try different foods. I'm not afraid to try different adventures. You know, just different things in life. And I think that's probably why I live the way that I live, or I ask people the questions that I ask. I feel like, especially during the pandemic, we really discovered how many people suffer from social anxiety and all different types of anxieties. And I might have more of a physical anxiety, you know, because I get, you know, a little bit stressed out sometimes, like thinking about these things, or if I have a lot to get done. But what I was going to say is, you know, a lot of people with these anxieties, one way that it carries over with anxiety is people are afraid to approach people with genuine and honest questions or conversation, simply just conversation, where I'm not afraid to do that. Like, I don't feel like I have to present myself in a certain way. I feel like to make someone else feel comfortable, I need to be comfortable. So I feel like if I'm comfortable, then they'll be comfortable and I'll get the most out of the conversation. That fear of death makes me feel like this could be the only conversation I have with this human being. So I should actually find out who they are. And if I, you know, even if it's a first time introduction, you know, it's like, or if you've known the person for a long time, you still want to know, like, how is this person going to be a part of my life cycle, you know? And because life is so short, I'm like, I want to know as much as I can about you, because this conversation could teach me something. It can make me realize something. It could send some, you know, emotions through my body that I needed, you know? And I guess I always feel like I like learning. I liked learning about other humans and other people, and I want to hear your stories. And you know, more often than not, we find out that there is something that someone can offer to you if you know, give them the chance to open up to you. And people aren't going to open up to you unless you give them that comforting feeling that to where they can open up to you. And so I feel like it's weird. Like, I feel like a lot of my fear and my phobia that I have brings out good parts of me as well. Like time is so short, time is of the essence. So I need to make sure that I'm getting to the horse's mouth and, talking about the things that actually matter, So that's kind of like how I feel. And I know a lot of people have issues with death itself, not necessarily the fear of dying, but, the fear of, or just dealing with death. Some people struggle with dealing with the actual death. Dealing with the death of a loved one is one of the hardest things anybody can go through. It really challenges your psyche and your emotions and how you live the rest of your life. It's like the biggest challenge of a lifetime. It can completely change people. That's another reason, I guess, why it's so fearful to me. Because it doesn't just affect you. It affects everybody around you, Death is scary in so many different aspects. It's that scary balance of because I just dealt with my orange tabby cat, Fritz, passing away. And it was really hard for me. And it was like, do I choose to put him down? Like, he seems like he's okay. He's not suffering that much. And then he kept having a seizure and then coming back to life. I'm like, look, he still wants to be here. And ultimately, I ended up having him pass on his own. And it was awful. It was awful and sad and some scarring, but somehow I needed to see it happen because I didn't want to live with the fact that I had killed my cat or watching someone else do it. It's difficult, and there's no wrong or right choice. It's just what we what we do and how it helps us cope and go through it. But just watching something go into the ground and knowing it's there, you really have to separate and try to believe in that there is a soul and an energy that leaves its body, and that is what still lives on somewhere. And you just hang on to that. It's crazy how you can meet a soul and have these soul connections, and they really can the energy can just live around you for so long. Even people say, oh, I had a phantom feeling that that person was still there. And I think that's because the phantom feeling is there is real energy that's left behind. It doesn't go away forever, and energy is invisible and it's around us all the time. A lot of people do struggle if a lot of people have a PTSD from if a parent, a sibling, relative has passed away. It's a hard thing to face in the future. I know people that I don't want to ever marry again because I lost the love of my life. I don't know how to move on from that, and that's okay. That's okay. People who've lost pets, I'm never getting a pet again, or I'm never getting a pet like that again. For me, I got a kitten, not right away, but soon after Fritz had passed, and it helped me, it helped me heal and have love. And there's obviously more than one reason, because dealing with infertility, it's just loss after loss after loss, and then this loss, and I needed something to need me, So I needed that in my life. And I guess that's also it, right? So it's different personalities. My empathic personality, my husband's completely different. Things don't affect my husband. He's been to funerals, totally fine. Doesn't need to cry. Marriages, cool. Someone got married. He doesn't feel things the way I feel things. He doesn't see things the way that I see things. And that's hard for me because it's hard to communicate with him how it's affecting my whole soul, my whole body. And why are people built so differently? I mean, truly, people are built so differently. And you're like, okay, well, we're all humans, so shouldn't we all be somewhat the same? We blink and we move our hands the same, but there's so much inside of us that is not visible, that is so completely different. There's no thing that you can look at and be like, that person's definitely like this, right? There's no map. It's just the only way you're going to find out is by talking to people. That's the only way, which is why I do it so much, which is why I enjoy having conversations seemingly about nothing, but they're not. They always go somewhere. You will always learn something about somebody, and it's so interesting to me. I'm like, really? So this is how you think? Like, it's like every day can be a new class project, it's just interesting. So I don't know what it is. I've been afraid of death my whole life, and it's not like I'm scared I can't leave my house fear. It's wonderment and curiosity. And I have done things, sort of meditation, yoga, certain things that I do to, quickly get my mind out of that headspace and say, it's okay, it's a part of life, and I don't need to think about it. And, when it does happen, I have put my faith where I need to put it so that I know in my heart, I'll be like, I can release now, whatever will be, will be. Without going into religion today, it can be a religious thing, and it can be a scientific thing, emotional thing, brainwaves thing, energy thing, all of the things. But it's a real issue. And it's something that not a lot of people talk about. And because I talk to a lot of people, I know that I'm really rare in the way that I think. If you are listening and you're someone who has this, I would love to hear that you exist out there. I have not really met many people. When I tell people that I have this fear of death, they just go, oh, you have anxiety. I'm like, but it's very specific. I don't have like anxiety. I'm like, this is a specific thing that I have a wonderment about. Or then there's the ever dreadful, what do you say to somebody when they've lost a loved one? And it's really hard. I think people are getting better at what to say because we're aware of how it can affect people and that there is no perfect thing to say. I'm more of an actions person rather than a words person, because I always feel like I know they're getting all of the words. I know that they're getting all of those things. I'm usually like my love language is gifts. That's my love language. If you got quality time, I feel really bad for you, because that means your mother-in-law is knocking on your door every week. But no, I love quality time too. I feel like everybody's a little bit of all of them. I think it's a little bit silly. But I do understand the purpose of the love languages, especially in how you receive love. But everything, it must have its end, right? Or there's no beginning. Death is not the opposite of life, but the counterpart to birth, right? It's beautiful because it represents change and growth and new birth and all of these things. And it's hard. It's like, what do you say? I'm sorry for your loss. Oh, I don't know how you feel, but I'm here for you. God has a plan. There's just so many different things. And that's another struggle. I feel like all around, death is just hard. It's just hard. We don't know what to say. We don't, everybody feels it differently. Everybody experiences it differently, and it's hard to say, oh, I know what you're going through, because you don't ever know what any specific person is going through. I mean, even if I've had people come up to me and say, oh, I know what you're going through. I went through IVF and I now have 3 kids. I'm like, well, then that's not the same. It's not the same, because mine's not working at all and you have 3 kids to show for it, So everybody's journey is so different, and, we trip over our words and put our foot in our mouths. And I think as long as people are open to understanding that it's about the intention and where we're coming from, that's the best place to be, is to be understanding, and on both ends, be understanding of the person tripping over their words, trying to console you and showing you that they care, and then also be understanding that the person might take your words and be like, cool, that I know you tried real hard. Thanks for that. But, because it's hard. Everybody's experience is different. Some people are taken from you in ways that you could have never fathomed. Some are coming, and death in itself is something that I feel we will not understand until it happens to us. And then there's also how different cultures celebrate death, right? Like in the Mexican culture, like from Coco, the El Dia de los Muertos. And it teaches you about life, and it teaches you to celebrate it. And while the Day of the Dead is now, commercialized like any other holiday, it's still just a wonderful celebration of paying respect to our ancestors. And, in the Catholic religion, we've come more accustomed to cremation mostly because of money. And there's these other beautiful ways that they, wrap the body in these linens and, kind of like they would have done in the olden days, and they'll bury the body and like plant a tree over it to represent new life. Some people do the open casket, which I find very difficult because while I understand it's like if you didn't see someone and you didn't get to say goodbye, that's not them anymore. And it's very apparent that it's not. Not to say that embalming and the services of the morticians isn't absolutely wonderful. And honestly, I don't know how anybody could do that job. Like, genuinely, I actually knew a guy who did it, and he'd come to work and talk about, I couldn't get Susie's jaw shut the other day. It was really tough. And I'm like, oh, please, nope. Wow, how do you do that every day? Like, that's just difficult. And I guess they just don't, I think they do what I'm saying. They don't look at it as a person anymore. It almost just becomes, this inanimate object, this doll for them. And they're like, oh, I'm just, it's arts and crafts or something, and I guess you would have to be in that mindset. I just couldn't do it because it would emotionally scar me. Because like I said, I think there's just different types of people who can look at things differently, and they feel things differently. And like, what is that? What is that? Why do I feel death so viscerally? Why do I feel so connected while others don't? Like, and then that kind of scares you, right? So that kind of scares me. In my marriage, I feel sometimes I'm so connected, and then I'm like, are you not? Like, when I die, like, are you not going to feel me? Like, I want to know that, like, we're connected. And then, can we be connected? Are we going to see everybody? And then how are we going to see them? At what age are we going to see them? Is it our last brain's functionality of our memories that we're moving on with? What if you have Alzheimer's and your brain is deteriorating? Then does it go back to what you originally remembered? Like, how does this work, And I guess it just all comes down to what your belief is. And I guess mine is so open. My belief is open. I'm open and all over the place with those things. And I love to hear about all of, especially the wonderful ways of thinking about it. I love all of those things. I will say this. I am not an atheist. I do not believe that we will just be worm food, because I just think the world is too incredible. The world is too perfect for that to be. I just think that, as scientists have discovered, we only use a certain percentage of our brain, and so many people are trying to access the rest of our wonderful, beautiful brains, and maybe we'll find those answers. I truly am like, how come we can't? Like, there's got to be something we're missing here. Who's good at puzzles? Let's figure this out. How can we access? Because I would really like to give the other side of my brain that I am using a little bit of a break. If I could access the rest of it, I feel like I wouldn't be as stressed in life in general. So someone needs to figure it out. Let's tap into it. It's right there. It's right there. It's literally right there. So death is just an interesting conversation. It can go in so many different directions. And I don't know if any of you have ever been injured before, but if you've ever been injured, there's different phases that your body goes through, right? It's like, at first you might not feel the pain, or your body might protect itself from the pain and create numbness naturally, as a self-protection mode, right? And I think that's what I want to hope death is, that while a person can never firsthand share their experience, that there is a moment of, oh my gosh, what is that? And then maybe the realization makes it hurt for a moment. But then once there's a certain level reached and you're about to go, that the pain does just kind of flood away. And the body takes over and your soul just kind of releases and the energy moves on. So I like to hope that death is, not as painful and you won't remember it, because I know, at least with my IVF, like I've said before, that IVF and the pain of the needles and any kind of pain that you have to endure regularly, just the pain is in the past. You just have to keep thinking about it. It's going to be momentary and then it'll be gone. So I think that's kind of what gets me through the hard, moments of when I'm really thinking about it. And then just what is death? Religiously, blood was called the seat of life. So when the blood was poured out, life also flowed away. So, and then, taking your last breath, right? So people thought that the spirit left your body through the breath that you released as well. And that was the significance. Or it's when brain function stops is when you die. So there's just so many different ways to look at it, different religious and philosophical viewpoints. And, people have different definitions of death, which is, a lot of times in hospitals was the cessation of all vital functions, right? So things sometimes change, or it depends on, where your religious faith base is. But in a hospital, until after the 1960s, when they developed the brain death. And that is what was introduced, because those functions would continue and they would be like, okay, well, it's not just his heart stopped. His brain is still working, so he's not technically dead yet. So I was watching the season finale of This Is Us, and they just had some really good quotes and things to think about. And, they had this moment, spoiler, so if you haven't seen it, I don't want to give anything away, so just, fast forward like 20 seconds. But they had kind of this moment with, Mandy and Milo at the end, and thinking like, oh, what's going to happen? Like, am I going to be able to see them? And Milo's like, it's hard to explain. And he's like, but you'll be there. Don't worry. She's like, yeah, I don't want to like watch them shower or anything. I want to be there for them though. And then there's this other scene where he's helping his kids shave. They're really young. And, he's kind of explaining how we spend so much of our lives looking to the future. Every day is, what am I doing next? What's happening in the future? That we forget to live in the present. And what am I doing today? What is exciting today? What is going to make me happy today, right? Happy. I don't know why I just did that. And then it's like when we get old, we spend our lives trying to remember the past. And I remember when my Aunt Donna was dying of breast cancer. She was in hospice, and I mean, it's really difficult if you've ever been through something like that, just watching somebody become so frail and then they're not themselves anymore. But when she was still expressive and aware, I just remember the saddest thing of her saying like, I'm going to miss out. I'm going to miss out on everything. And it was the first time she was, a faithful woman, religious Catholic, and I always looked up to her, and I remember she'd always, curtsy, bow down by the pew at church and give the sign of the cross. And she was just a good woman and never like cursed a day in her life. And when she would get angry, it was funny. And, she was really the glue that held our family together. And, I've tried to help keep our family together ever since she's been gone. But she's just a light and a wonderful person. And she never really admitted when she had real feelings. She was kind of one of those people that didn't always talk about her sorrows or her deepest, darkest feelings. And I remember that was the first time I really felt the urgency. I really felt like there it is. There is that like undeniable truth that she's really scared, And so it's experiences like that too that just stick with me. It's that empathic side of me.
And now it's time for the twist. To distort or misrepresent the meaning of an unexpected development of events.
Let's see what's stirring and who's shaking things up.
This kid from Texas, 18-year-old adult, was bullied. I was bullied when I was younger, and I will have an episode on bullying, but, it's because of bills like the Don't Say Gay bill that I feel people are making it next to impossible for teachers and counselors to be human, because you demand that you be the only one to parent your kids. Well, you are around them all day. If if a teacher felt like they could intervene and not lose their jobs over it, then maybe we could have changed things. My friends have actually told me that they love it if I step in sometimes. I've actually been thanked for that. Oh, thank you so much, because parenting is exhausting and it's hard. And sometimes parents just need a break. And, if there's another adult around, they're like, yeah, go ahead. Just, take care. Yeah, that's fine. Just do that for me. Tell them, don't hit their brother and sister, pick up your toys, whatever, and teachers need to be thanked on a daily basis. I mean, it just feels like, and I hate to say it, but it feels like Republicans are trying to turn everyone into robots and they think they're know-it-alls, and you're not. You are not the best parent in the world either. It takes an army of people, and you can't possibly be there for every detail of your child's life. So sometimes you have to just let them go, and you don't know what happens after death any more than I do in the literal sense. And, Jesus was a Jew, right? So that came before Christianity ever existed. And I get that from Christ on, you felt like, oh, this is the answer. If everyone just did this, then we'd all have peace on earth. But the fact is that humans make up their own minds, and God has been here longer than Christ. There has always been death and violence before the Messiah ever arrived. So what was the sign for them then? Was there no guidance before? So they were all just lost souls. They didn't get lucky, right? I guess so. So sucks for them. Everyone before Christ, oh well. What should people have done before Christ showed up? I'm sure there has always been a way to follow and find light. Buddhism is one of the oldest religions. People have had belief in a God since our creation, and we still suffer. It's part of the gig. That's part of life. So the thoughts and prayers are nice, and I'm down to pick a day. You want to pick a day and have the entire world pray and think, but that's not going to save or fix something that humans created, right? That's what we've created these things. Our life here is controlled by us. I can't force someone's parents to instill goodness in their souls, but we can change laws to protect us from the evil that we know exists. If religions believe that Satan is real, then Satan is real. There will always be good and evil. So why are you fighting it? Why are you trying to push something that is unattainable? Not everyone will be a Christ follower and be inherently good. It's a sad truth, and you're right. If we were all less selfish, prideful, and greedy, then we probably would live in a better world. But the world is unjust and unfair, and we are complex humans who need love and patience. I have no patience, and understanding and help. But we don't all receive that help, and we can't force people to want to give it, nor can we force people to want to receive it. So the only way we can live is the way we want to live faithfully and do what we can to protect ourselves lawfully. That's it. So if you can pull away your pride and your cockiness to give up a gun to save a life, then you should. If you can make a sacrifice like others have, then you should. If you can vote for laws that make obtaining an AR-15 less accessible, then do it. Because there will always be evil. There will always be misguided, lonely, hurt people. There will always be vengeance and pain. But if we take away some of these human-made killing machines, then we can help the health of our country. It's just like cutting out sugar or carbs. Bit by bit, things get easier and your body gets healthier. our country will get healthier. You won't be as tempted when the things are slowly removed. And then it just becomes a way of living, literally getting to live. It's not about prayer. You can pray. I have nothing against that. That's not what this is about. Murderers pray. There's no percentage of prayer that takes away choice. Some people who are bombers feel they are fighting for their God, and they pray all the way up to the point of killing thousands of people. They prayed. Does that make them faultless? No. Or are you demanding everyone in the world only be Christian? Which I think that's really the bigger issue, right? That's the one way. That's the only way, right? I get that. But you can't control it. Still, we come back to that control and the life that we have here and how we can make it better while we're here. You can't regulate mental health, but you can regulate gun laws. The right to bear arms, it was part of a regulated militia. So you're basically an honorary member of the military if and when needed, right? It's not so, that law wasn't put into place, which, by the way, that was back when we had like muskets. Okay, fine. You want your right to bear arms, then everyone gets a musket, like it's a old, antiquated law, okay? And it needs to be changed. It doesn't mean, oh, I'm an American, I get to have an AR-15, I can do whatever I want and go all willy-nilly whenever I want, it's my right. It was something back in the day to take pride in because people needed that protection because their towns were being pillaged and people would come after them. It was a different time. People have abused that privilege and our pride and what it actually stood for when it was truly necessary to bear arms. And I always laugh too because, I do know a lot of older men who have a very impressive gun collection. It's like, for example, it's like you'll be watching a movie like Tremors, right? Or like a zombie apocalypse movie, and Republicans see that. And there's always a joke in there like, I knew this day would come, you should be happy. Like there's always like that token Republican who has like the stash of 8,000 military guns and armor. And, then the Republicans watch that and go, see, they were ready. That's a smart man. I'm like, no, we're making fun. We're making fun because that's never going to happen. That's the point of the movie. This is not going to happen. People are like, I need to protect myself. From what? Really? You think that the militia's going to come for you? The government's going to knock on your door? Like you specifically? Like you're some important person? This is not a Liam Neeson film. It's... And no one thinks that religious people are inherently bad people. We understand. We understand the love coming from your heart. That you're like, if everyone just was good and did this and followed Christ, then they would be great. But like, you have to also understand how fortunate you were to be raised in an environment like that. That you were able to receive that kind of love. Some people don't ever receive that kind of love. And I know you're like, but I'm willing to give it. But you can't. You can't be everybody's mother. You can't. And I know that you're like, well, God can be everybody's father. Well, sure. But that doesn't mean they were brought up that way. It doesn't mean that they, there's a lot of babies that are dropped off at fire stations and at safe havens, and they are predisposed to mental health issues because of what their mom put in their bodies, and we can't always just control everything and think that everybody has the opportunity to eat better and to afford good organic food, which what is with that anyways? Like organic food in the 60s was just food and now it's different and it's more expensive. Like anyways, it's because we don't have the farming that we used to have. Everything has shifted, right? And I know that we are fighting to get back to those things because we mistakenly put hormones in our food thinking, oh, they're bigger, so that must be more food for more people and we can just mass produce this. But if you haven't noticed, if you go to the store, sometimes you'll get certain green peppers and they taste weird. Like they don't taste spicy anymore. Like we're actually losing the flavor of these things. It's like they make it bigger, but it has less flavor. So it doesn't pack as much punch as it used to. But if you guys want to pick a day, pick a national day, whatever you want to do, and we can pray for peace on earth and no killing, well, we can see what happens. I'll do it. I mean, I'll set the date right now, right? Let's do it. Let's pick a date. Let's do June 25th. Why not, right? And let's all do it and see what happens. And this is not an atheist point of view at all. It's just the reality that we live in. And I think it's great if you have faith in God. I think it's great if you are a Christian. I think if your faith brings you to a place of goodness personally and externally or outwardly towards others, then it is a fine faith. But it's not about anyone's agenda or what is being taught in schools. God is not taken out of schools. If you believe God is everywhere, our world has always had disparities, war, and violence. And I've heard people say that it's not how it used to be when I was younger, said every person of a certain age ever. Your personal upbringing and accounts on what happened in your bubble are simply yours alone. And that's the woke thing that people are talking about. It's like, open your eyes, look around you. Like, this is not new information that people are struggling. It's just being brought to light, especially because of social media. And honestly, social media is one of the main problems. People don't know how to communicate with one another. People don't, it's instant. Everything is so, we're overwhelmed with everything, and forcing an agenda is forcing an agenda, period. One thing does not have to do with the other. It's just an excuse to get what you want. It's greedy, which is the opposite of the commandments and faith, right? And religion. You think talking about God in school would have stopped the shooters? School is for a specific curriculum. It's not for teaching children about God. So if we only taught Christianity in schools and brought God into the schools, none of this would happen is incorrect. It's just incorrect. That's what Sunday school is for, or whatever other religious school or camp you want to voluntarily bring your child to, and you have that right. You have a lot of rights that many other countries don't have, and I feel like people are unappreciative and take for granted their freedoms and need to travel more, quite frankly, or read more. Some Americans are so ungrateful, and I've seen it. They pledge to the flag, support our troops, our men in blue, without fully understanding what we have. It's just this superiority complex. They whine all the time about what they want. Me. What else can I get? Many countries penalize blasphemy, defamation of religion. Burma citizens have to register their faiths, sometimes being denied building permits or citizenship. People are abused or killed for their opposing belief. We should be happy that we're all fighting. Hey, at least we're allowed to fight. We're allowed to have disagreements on a social media platform. China is officially an atheist organization. So is North Korea. Yet right-winged politicians thought it was okay that Trump was all buddy-buddy with Kim Jong-un, one of the worst violators of human rights, with estimates of up to 200,000 North Koreans currently suffering in labor camps. Yep, tens of thousands of whom are there for practicing their faith. Public religious expression is not acceptable in Saudi Arabia and other parts of Asia. So stop your whining. Let's change gun rights and laws. We don't live in the 16th century. You don't want to live in fear, yet religion is taught to be God-fearing. You are afraid someone will break into your home and kill you and you won't have protection, but people are afraid of their kids going to school. Get your priorities straight. You can have a gun and still be ambushed in your own home and not get to your gun on time. The odds are much better without them. And people are like, well, they'll find other ways to kill with a knife. Oh, okay. But I guarantee you that person with the knife will be stopped and less people will be murdered. Guarantee it. I believe the problem is the exact thing we are using right now, social media. Children are overwhelmed with the outlets, are overexposed to information, and, if anything, we need more attention, on counseling. But it's the obvious and most dramatic change in our society ever is technology. It has exploded at such a fast pace that we can't keep up with it. And our economy is suffering because we can't afford to keep up with the technology that we are now expected to use every day. Shit, I can't even get an acting job if I don't have X amount of followers. Like, literally, it's a requirement on some castings. That's silly. Like, why can't I be mysterious? Like, what happened to that? You know? Like, why can't it be like, ooh, what's going on in Katie's life? You know, I wanted my social media to be private, and now I have 4 Instagram accounts, a TikTok, a Twitter, a Facebook, a YouTube page, and I'm forced to stay relative. No one's paying me for this. And it's time consuming. Like, maybe we should be taking away social media, not guns. I mean, we should still take away guns, but I actually tried to start a campaign a few years ago, a national holiday, if you will, for the world to go off social for one day. I had about 15 friends do it. They loved it. Might be something worth trying again, as the anxiety I remember people having over that one day that the internet was actually being refurbished and everyone was having to find other outlets. But yes, maybe we get rid of social media and guns. Granted, the argument in statistics on how other countries survive and function without them is impressive. I mean, I personally don't mind guns for hunting. And like I said, regulations, but they need to be real strict. You know, if you want to keep the same gun regulations, then we need to regulate bullets then. Because it's like, maybe we should put a very high cost on these bullets, understanding that the cost to kill something, you know, is a pretty penny. I mean, people hire people to kill other people, and it's thousands of dollars, right? So maybe we should do that, knowing what guns' purpose is for. You know, it's simply too easy to get your hands on other guns that are not for hunting or practicing or being a police officer, you know, going to the range. You know, this is something you can't expiate for. What's done is done. And the shooter usually kills themselves, gets shot, or is in prison for life. So the only way to satisfy the needs of our people as a nation is to take preemptible action. And I know of a kid, actually, where he took his dad's handgun and he was taught how to use it properly, right, by his father. He got upset one night because of a breakup with his girlfriend, and in a moment of weakness, he shot himself over a girl. Young kid. Our brains aren't even fully developed yet. That's why guns are bad. It's nothing personal to you. It's just knowing that it's accessible. And we are humans with moments of weakness. And because of that moment of weakness, he's dead. When he could have just been crying a lot, or writing in a journal, or going on a bender. But instead, he's dead. And the only reason the left is saying to get rid of them in total is because we have had so much push from the GOP on issuing regulations. Every attempt at change has been shot down. We're trying. We tried in the Clinton administration. The Democrats are trying. And the Republicans still just stand in their corner and say, we need more God, thoughts and prayers. Is there a reason we can't have both? Why can't we have gun control, common sense gun laws, and God, and prayer? You know, God isn't in control down here on earth. He never has been. He may have produced miracles through Jesus Christ, but that was his story. That was a long time ago. And if God could control everything that happens here on earth, he damn well wouldn't allow the killing and natural disasters to occur. And I just want to interject and be clear that for the sake of conversation, I am describing a majority when I say Republicans and Democrats. I'm not saying all of one side is identical in their thinking, putting people into a box, nor am I ignoring libertarians. I understand there could be Republicans who are atheist and want more common sense gun laws, and that not all Republicans are conspiracy theorists, and in turn that not all Democrats want socialism and agree with abortion. But there is a majority, and that is what I am speaking to on Views. We only can control so much, and if one of them is to stop the big bad guns, who may as well have been built by Satan, then so be it. We are given the tools, our eyes for our sight, to see the horror. So let's use the tools that God gave us and say, guns cause death. There's a time and a place for everything. If your kid can't wear a spaghetti strap shirt to school and short shorts
and you can somehow live by those ridiculous rules, then you can live by removing guns from our homes and only using them in shooting ranges or for hunting or for a militia or for protection by an officer or someone who has been extremely evaluated physically and mentally. 202 mass shootings. Prayers to the lost and for the families and friends.
Catch my follow-up Fridays on YouTube, where I respond to your YouTube comments on any thoughts or questions relating to each week's episode. It gives you a chance to have a more intimate conversation with me and opens up the door to new topics. Find me at my YouTube channel, Katie Rose Straight Up with a Twist. And remember, if you're thinking it, I'm probably talking about it.